Hello, welcome back. It is all for women's football, and yes, it's me again. But hey, it's you again as well, which is great. We're all like one great, big, massive community, which is absolutely wonderful. And we're pleased to have you back with us. It is the Women's Champions League. It's all set, it's all sorted, all the little qualifying malarkey has been dealt with. And instead, we are back with a group stage that the likes of Manchester United can only dream of reaching, but three, that's right, an entire 25% of the WSL has made it to the group stages. But will any of them be victorious? I've got a couple of people who can help us work that out. So why don't you come and join us on the other side of this? Hello and welcome back once again. It is all for women's football. And to be honest with you, yes, Sean, I am, but I'm just pleased that I constantly remember the correct channel names each time. And I feel like if anything deserves a Blue Peter badge, it is that. But we'll see where we end up. Well, there are four groups that we're going to look at. But before we look at those, why don't we take a look at my groupies, the people that have joined us here today. And I can't wait to get into it with both of them. Just below me here, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Rob, which I'm just so delighted to have. Been a while since we've had you back on, Rob. How are you doing, sir? He's muted for a start, so quiet, which we'll change that. There we go. Go away. Start again.
I was going to say, technically, it's 2 weeks since I was here. I was here for the season preview show. But again, I don't think I had the pleasure of your company that night. So delighted to be back.
Excellent, and we are happy to have you. Just over here, not quite over there. That's David Beckham. That one there, that's Beth. God Almighty, it's all gone wrong. Beth's here, which is really wonderful. Beth, how are you? Drag me out of this hole that I've just dug myself.
Hello, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Yo, wonderful. Like, yeah.
Never better.
Off the camera, now off the camera. Oh, this could be a good show tonight. Oh, it's all going wrong. I'm gradually shutting down. 27 people watching me go crazy. We should move on. That would be the easiest way. And we're going to move on with the group which begins with letter A, because I'm nothing if not thorough in terms of making sure we go through things in order. And quite an interesting group we have got there. We have got Galatasaray, we have got Lyon, we have got Roma, and we have got Wolfsburg, which is, again, a very interesting little shout there. I think Lyon, Roma, Wolfsburg, some big names in there. Galatasaray, obviously, looking, I wouldn't say quite on the new side, but probably looking like the fodder, I suppose, potentially for the group. Rob, talk to us a little bit about how you're feeling about Group A. It's obviously the only one that doesn't involve any English teams. So whereabouts are you sitting with regards to that?
I mean, I think if you talk about that probably along with one of the other ones is sort of the groups of death. Again, I'm one of the people that believe in the Champions League. You rarely get groups where you look at and you think, God, they're very weak groups, because every team that's qualified here has got to a point where they've qualified on merit. They're going to have knocked out at least one or two very decent teams on the way, or alternatively, they've done something, domestically won their league. I think A is really fascinating because you've got sort of a lot of teams that are in sort of transition. AS Roma, who had such a good campaign a couple of years ago, but sort of maybe didn't hit the heights you were expecting last year. But again, obviously Italian sort of champions. You've got Wolfsburg that have such pedigree in the competition, but they're very much in a transitional sort of season. I think a lot of people are underestimating Galatasaray. Galatasaray have had a long qualification period for this, but they've knocked out some quality teams in the period in order to get there. And also, I do think that Lyon are obviously Lyon. Like, even with the new manager, they've still got an unbelievably stacked squad. And I think most importantly, they've got players that have been there, done that. They know all about this tournament. They know all about how to win it and sort of how to win it from an ugly stance. And I just think that they are, I mean, you look at Galatasaray, they knocked out Slavia Praha, who got into the group stages, have been consistently getting into the group stages. They've also knocked out teams like Racing as well. they are beating teams that are decent teams in order to get there. So I actually think A is different. And someone else says, yeah, Wolfsburg's form is shaky. Wolfsburg looked really poor at the weekend in their loss to Eintracht Frankfurt. I think that they're massively missing, obviously, some of the players that they have lost in the last couple of years. And I think that, Lyon's defensive depth, they're playing this back three at this moment in time under Joe Montemurro. And you do feel that if they lose key players in there for any long period of time, they're going to be teams that you can score against. So I actually think it's a really hard group to call.
And I think that seems entirely fair and very well summarised in that respect. Beth, would you go along with that? Because again, there are some tough ones. I mean, I've written off Galatasaray immediately there. Rob has suitably scolded me and chastised me from that particular thought process. But I mean, if we flip that the other way and Galatasaray did manage to progress, losing two of Lyon, Roma or Wolfsburg would be a bit of a shock in the competition, wouldn't it?
It definitely would. Yeah, I completely agree really with what Rob was saying. I think it's a tough group to call, and especially with the way the qualifying works, every team that's in these groups has gotten there by knocking out teams of massive experience, of massive talent. So it's definitely a tough one to call. You're always going to have your favourites with the likes of Lyon. But all three of those other teams, I think, can and will compete. So it will be really interesting to see how that goes. And I think whichever way it does go, there's going to be a bit of an upset, a bit of a shock, because, yeah, it's a really solid group. So be very interesting to see where it goes. But I definitely wouldn't write off Galatasaray at all. You never know. They might be, in a way, the underdogs of this group. But I think we saw last year that it doesn't always go how we expected to. But yeah, I think that experience that Lyon have will always work in their favour. But I can see a couple of comments raising concerns about depth and injuries, which I think is a valid concern when all of these other teams, even if they are newer to the competition, do pose a threat. So yeah, it will certainly be an interesting group. I think putting this as kind of one of the groups of death as such is, yeah, a very valid way of putting it.
When you look at Lyon in that one, though, Beth, I mean, they are 8-time winners of the Champions League. They've been in the final 11 times. Would you put them as the favourites in that group?
I think I would. However, I think the fact that they are the favourites doesn't guarantee them anything, because we see teams that are the favourites getting knocked out or dropping points, etc., all the time, especially in the Champions League. So I would, but I don't think that means that they're untouchable in any way, shape or form, especially not by teams like Roma, for example. I think Roma could threaten Lyon for sure. Wolfsburg are a really strong side, and Galatasaray in their own right too. So as much as I probably would put Lyon as my favourites, I don't think that means they're guaranteed to pass with flying colours as such.
Interesting for you, Rob. Where would you go with Lyon on that one? Because again, like I say, they are the team with the biggest pedigree within that group. Again, I mean, you look at Wolfsburg, we know that they've done really well. They've won it twice, but not since 2014. Runners up in 2020 and 2023 as well. Roma, haven't seen a huge amount out of them. Like we say, Galatasaray, not necessarily there. I mean, if you were, and we don't necessarily promote this on this channel, but if you were putting a bet on, you'd probably go Lyon and Wolfsburg, wouldn't you?
The common form says so. I think Lyon probably will still top the group, because I think they've got, again, the firepower that you've got there. Even if Eda Hegerberg isn't around, you've got Chawinga now at the club. You've got Demorne. You've got Diani. You've got Lindsay Horan. You've got so much quality in the. Again, I can't remember the young striker's name, but again, one of the young strikers in there is having a very decent start to the season. AS Roma this year have been started really patchy. Again, I was actually looking at them doing an article on this for elsewhere, but AS Roma already have actually drawn 2 games this season, and that's already more times than they've actually drawn all of the entire last year. I think that teams are starting to work AS Roma out a little bit, and are starting, again, speaking on behalf of Mia, as I said, you got someone like Giuliano in the Roma ranks. I think also Roma is a really tough place to go. The fans are very, very loud. They are very, very behind the team, and they've shown they can really perform on European nights. They've already, in a couple of years, toppled the likes of Bayern München. And I think that you're looking at that group. I think Galatasaray away is going to be difficult for all of the teams because of the nature of going to a stadium like Galatasaray. Again, I can only imagine the fans are as vociferous as the male Galatasaray fans, because again, I'm sure there's a lot of crossover, and they quite frankly make a lot of noise. I do think as well, Wolfsburg. The problem with Wolfsburg is you can never count them out in a tournament like this. They've got so many players that just have that annoying ability just randomly to turn up in tournaments, and none more so than Alex Pop, obviously announced her international retirement today to focus on the end of her club career. But they've got players in there that are just so streetwise, I think is the phrase I'd use. So I'd probably put Lyon as favourite. I actually do personally think, though, AS Roma might just nick second. And then I think Wolfsburg will probably come third. I think it will be close between the two of them. You'll maybe look at a situation where it goes down to goal difference or a single point. And I do think Galatasaray will come last, but I do think they will win at least one game, and I think they'll take points off at least one of Lyon or Wolfsburg.
Interesting. So, Rob, which two are you going for?
I think, in that case, I'll go for Lyon and then AS Roma in second.
Oh, he's gone for Roma. The controversy begins. Beth, you going to go along with Rob, or you go along with me there and saying it's going to be Lyon and Wolfsburg?
Yeah, I think I agree with Rob. I think that with Roma, even if teams like that if they're having a bit of a rough patch in their league, for example, they just seem to find a way when it comes to something like the Champions League. And I think that's what we're going to see this year. So I think it's honestly going to be tight all the way through this group, though. I don't think points-wise there's going to be that much in it, especially when you're looking at kind of like second, third and fourth place.
So which two are you going for? Because I'm writing them down, you see. I know.
Yeah, I am going for Lyon and Roma.
Gone for Lyon and Roma. Okay. I will be keeping a beady eye on that, and if Roma don't finish second...
I look forward to having to put the public apology out when Roma don't go through. But when they come bottom of the group, I know that I'll be putting my public apology out.
Yeah, I just
Roma to go through. I'm going to hide. Sorry,
yeah. No, that's all right. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think their home legs are what's gonna do it for them, but we'll see.
Interesting, very interesting indeed. So that is Group A, and the consensus here seems to be that Lyon's definitely going through. Could be Roma, could be Wolfsburg, but it's 2-1 to Roma on that one. So there we go. Well done. See, I like it when people come in and agree with me. Well done. You're the first one to be shown on the screen just for agreeing with me. Yeah, terrible, isn't it? But there we go. I'm in charge of the buttons, and that's how it works. Group B is, well, I mean, we'll start with Beth on this one, but what a group this is, by the way. Celtic, the Scottish team, I believe, ever to make it to the group stages of the Women's Champions League, which is just brilliant.
I just throw something in here for Glasgow City fans? Would like to remind you that they did so far progress in the old format all the way to the quarterfinals, and I know there will be one Glasgow City fan that will have tuned in tonight to make sure I got that out there for them.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. You're right, of course, to say that. And we did a big deep dive into the Scottish League on this channel, and it was interesting because I was talking to the guys that were on saying, can you see a Scottish team sort of breaking into it and doing well and being able to really represent the league? And they weren't thinking that it was going to happen anytime soon necessarily. And then, of course, Celtic went, hold my beer, and off they went. Here they are. So, yes, we know Glasgow City are an unbelievable football team, but in terms of this particular format where we've got the groups and all of that sort of jazz, it is the first time that we have seen a Scottish team in there. Then, of course, we've got a little team called Chelsea who nobody's really heard of. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. Sorry, I've had to do it, Rob. Just because you're there, really. If you hadn't been there, because you're there. One runners-up appearance in the Champions League final in 2021. FC20, less said about them, the better. Still not quite over that one in midweek myself on the men's side. But and then, of course, Real Madrid. And the big story, I suppose, with Real Madrid there, they defeated Sporting to get into the group stages. And Sporting with the team who beat Eintracht Frankfurt, the second most successful club in Champions League for the women's history, with 4 wins and 2 runners-up spots, but not since 2015. So very interesting to see how they've once again been bopped out of it. Beth, when you look at that, I mean, the excitement's all about this game against Celtic, really, isn't it? You know, for them, it's going to be a real carnival, and you would just hope it would not be a carnivorous carnival, so they're not getting absolutely walloped, but it should be brilliant, especially for the people of Scotland, to get some Champions League football over there.
Yes, 100%. I think it's brilliant. First time for Celtic in the competition, this stage of competition, which is obviously just so great to see. And first time for a Scottish side to have come this far since the old format, as was mentioned with Glasgow City. So yeah, I can't wait to see how they get on. Really, really hope that it is fun for everyone, which I'm sure it will be. I think Celtic, they're going to have so much drive behind them. They're going to have so much support behind them, both on and off the pitch. So yeah, it'll be so exciting to see. You've got your obvious favourites in that group, especially in Chelsea. I really think Chelsea are going to go far, far this year. And Real Madrid, I expect to do well. Of course, they are Real Madrid, but they also, just things like having Caroline Weir coming back from her ACL, I think will make a massive, massive difference for them. So yeah, you kind of have Celtic as your more obvious underdogs, but never say never. And then FC20, I know, is a touchy subject, but I think definitely have potential to maybe cause some problems for Real Madrid and pick up some points. So yeah, but I think the main thing that I'm excited to see is kind of that support for Celtic at their home games. I think it's going to be absolutely unreal, and I hope that will come through in the performance as well. They've been absolutely you can just tell that they want to make the most of this, really. It's such a historic thing for the club, so yeah, can't wait to see it. But I think all of those fixtures are going to be so exciting to watch, and I think in the UK, Chelsea Celtic is definitely a big one that even if you don't necessarily support either of those teams, people are going to watch, because it's just massive.
Absolutely agree with you. I can fully see myself trying to find the Chelsea against Celtic games for certain, because they've been doing fairly well in their league as well. Rob, for you, obviously, spoiler alert, you are obviously Chelsea through and through. We know that, but we also know that you have the ability to be straight down the middle where you need to be. And this is a very interesting mini league for you guys as well. You mentioned off stage that it's going to be you against Real Madrid again. But yeah, it's one of those interesting things, isn't it? A lot of people conflate men's football and women's football in terms of the reputation of the clubs. And again, I promise you this isn't a dig, but when you're looking at the likes of Chelsea and Real Madrid and the fact that neither of them yet has a Champions League trophy, it almost feels wrong. Do you see that possibly being rectified anytime soon? And you would imagine it's going to be Chelsea and Real Madrid coming through this group.
Yeah, I mean, I still stand to the point that I think Chelsea would have made the final last year if Myra Ramirez had been fully fit. Whether they win the final or not doesn't matter, but that more because of how good I think Myra Ramirez is than anything else, and how well she played in the first leg. But again, refereeing controversies against Barcelona aside, where have we heard that before? I think Chelsea and Madrid will win, but that's again people writing off Twente. Twente are a very good player. So people saying Vika Captain isn't ready. I think people ignore the fact Vika Captain is one of the main reasons why FC Twente is at this point in the tournament. Again, I'm a big Vika Captain believer, but she was someone who last year at 18 took that Twente midfield by the scruff of its neck and played pretty much every game. And the consensus was when Twente played well, Captain played well. Bonpastor clearly disagrees on Captain. She played the most minutes in pre-season. She came on the other day for her debut. It's been, again, Chelsea have such a huge squad in 180 minutes this season. We're not going to have seen the whole squad. I think that increasingly you'll start seeing more and more, but I can understand why she went with Nusken and Cuthbert at the start of the season, because at the end of the day, they won the league last year. You see why not? You see why they're sort of, they are league winners. And it's going to take Captain time to come into it. I actually do think Captain might be better for European games where the tempo can be a little bit slower at times. You can need to break down defence, and she's got that in the locker. But I do think Twente aren't going to be, the pushovers that people maybe expect. And I also don't think Celtic will be at all. I think Celtic are going to be one of those teams that, especially against Chelsea, they want to show up, especially considering how Rangers, have obviously played against English opposition already in the competition this year in the qualifiers against Arsenal, obviously, and were being kind, pretty comprehensively dispatched. Chelsea have played, Rangers and Glasgow before in the competition and beaten them. So Celtic is the one team they still have to tick off the list of, the great Scottish teams to beat in European football. And I do think Elena Sadiku at Celtic is doing a fantastic job. We have to remember this is someone who had her own career cut short by retirement due to injury. And while obviously that must have been so difficult, she has such a great footballing brain. And when you actually get a chance to watch Celtic are becoming such a very, very good sort of side. Yeah, people say Barcelona, won 10-1 at the weekend. That's more of a, I don't want to debate Liga F at this moment in time. But I think going back to Celtic, I actually think, Elena Sadiku is someone who, in the next few years, I could see her coaching a very, very big side. They play a really nice brand of football. Obviously, you will get the allegations that in Scotland it is pretty much a 3-team league. But even still, even in a 3-team league, you've got to be that one team out of those 3 that comes out and dominates. And I'm really looking forward to it. I am intending to go out to Parkhead. I might go out to Twente. I will be at all 3 of the home games. I really love the Champions League on the women's side, because unlike, I think, the men's Champions League at times where you get some ties that you look at them, certainly historically, where they're sort of, a bit flat, especially towards match day 6. I think every single time, apart from last year, you've gone into match day 6 with at least some jeopardy in the game. And obviously, Erin Cuthbert being a, well-known Rangers fan, I'm sure she'll get a lovely reception from her sort of, Scottish brethren at Paradise. And I'm sure if she scores, then you'll probably see an all-timer celebration because it's well known that she has very much one-sided allegiances.
That's what football's all about, without a shadow of a doubt. We'll get into possible chances for teams to win the whole thing when we get into sort of the second part of this discussion. But Beth, for you, is it Chelsea and Real Madrid going through?
Definitely Chelsea. Real Madrid, I think so, but I do also think FC Twente could disrupt this group in that sense. So I do want to say Real Madrid still, but I think maybe not by as much as people potentially expect, if that makes sense.
Okay, so Rob, Beth's getting splinters in her bottom there. I'm not quite sure which way to fall with regards to Real Madrid and Twente. Almost like she's setting the foundation for if Twente making it for his goal. I did say they had a good chance of doing that. What are you doing for this one? Chelsea and Real Madrid for you?
Yeah, I think so. Again, Real Madrid have got a good squad. They've bolstered it with the likes of, be great to see Melanie Leopold's back at Stamford Bridge. Again, very much a fan favourite in her time there. Great to see Caroline Weir back fully fit as well, because, although I know she's a band name on the other channel, she's, you want to see the top class players fully fit. And obviously Linda Caicedo, another year older. In terms of whether they look good this season, they've played games so far in Liga F that you'd expect them to win. Ultimately, the proof in the pudding for Real Madrid will be they play Atletico, I think, the weekend after they play Chelsea. They need to be winning that. And then I'm not sure when the Clásico happens, but They have to, they have to perform in that, because ultimately, if Barcelona get ahead of them, then and get points ahead of them, then they are not going to catch up. And in terms of the other channel, I'm referring, of course, to All for United, where I believe Caroline Weir is one of the many banned subjects.
Banned? I don't think we've ever banned the subject over there. Probably for your own safety more than anything else would be a reason for not mentioning those sort of words. But it is online, so very little they could physically do. Okay, Group C. Let's move on to that one. And again, Group C with a very, very interesting group. We've got Arsenal, who obviously took out Hacken, who were the, I suppose, surprise package of last season's Champions League. Of course, they've won it. The only English side to have actually done so. That was in 2007, so it was a very long time ago.
They've won it. Their fans never mentioned that. I must have missed that.
I'm just reading the stats, Rob. Okay, I didn't deliberately put it this way. It's just a fact. Then you've got the Bayern Munich, the mighty Bayern Munich. They are in the running too, along with Juventus. And again, very interesting because neither of those sides has a Champions League to their name. And then, of course, we have a team who I have absolutely zero shame in admitting I had to Google. And we'll probably still get it wrong. Vålerenga from Norway, which is, again, lovely to see that we've got these teams that are able to break into the top 16 effectively in Europe and have the ability to go toe-to-toe with the big guns. So, Rob, we'll come back to you on this one. Arsenal, Bayern, Juve, again, if you were looking at this, just at the names of the football club across the footballing universe, you look at those three as being the top ones. I suppose the question, first of all, can you see Vålerenga having any impact in this group? Because we have seen groups where this happens and they just end up being the whipping boys effectively. And then, well, yeah, just that one really. Can you see Vålerenga having any impact in this group whatsoever? Feels like a good question to start with.
On paper, no, but the thing is in practice, we had this last year with Bran, I think it was, took Lyon to a draw and nearly, at times actually looked like beating Lyon. I think away, especially, it could be the sort of tough game. They played, I think, Anderlecht in the qualifying and knocked out Anderlecht pretty comprehensively, despite the fact they were down to 10 players in the first leg. They've also been doing well. Yeah, they beat Bran quite comfortably at the weekend in the league. And Bram looked a good side last year. Juventus look really good this season. I watched the game earlier today, and they look like a team reborn. Obviously had troubles last year, but I think recruited quite well in the summer, despite losing, some of the bigger names. They've actually developed some really interesting, some really interesting styles of play, and they've got players like Caruso, who I think is, born for the big stage. Lyon went down to 10 against Bran. Even still, you've seen plenty of times where, top teams have gone down to 10 in the women's game and still gone and walloped an opponent, even still. And Bran were competitive, with 11 players as well. It wasn't exactly a sort of, drubbing. Juventus this year look a much better outfit. Bayern, I think, have a phenomenal home record. They've also, I think they will be stung by the fact what happened last year by not getting through the group stages. I think they'll be very, very keen on that. And obviously, you've also got people at Bayern, like Pernilla Harder, for instance, who, if she's fully fit, she can be a match winner on her right. And I actually do think Arsenal are quite well equipped for the Champions League this year. I think they've maybe a bit more equipped for that than domestically, because they've got people like Caldente that have the ability just to sort of snatch a goal out of nowhere. Obviously, the performances so far against City, it was impressive at times, but some clear flaws. And yesterday against Leicester, well, very good in periods, but certainly Leicester were unlucky not to score. I do think that Arsenal's biggest issue is going to be breaking down teams. For example, like if someone like Juventus go 1-0 up in Turin, I think they will be completely happy making it a very stale game, and it's going to require someone like Caldente or Marnham, who loves the Champions League nights, or Beth Mead to really turn up to break down those stubborn defences. And if they can't do that, then they will drop points. I think this is a really tough group to call. I don't see anyone in this group getting more than 10 points, in all honesty. I think it's going to be really, really tight.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's very, very, very interesting how you've put that across there, Robert. And Beth, when you look at Arsenal, Bayern, and Juve, I mean, it's much for muchness for those three. You know, we spoke about a group of death earlier with Group A with Galatasaray, Lyon, Roma, and Wolfsburg. Group B felt a little bit more like there was a bit of potential, but here, this one's massive. Arsenal, Bayern, and Juve. I mean, I've picked my two because I don't do splinters. I've just gone for it. That's who it's going to be, and then take it on the chin. But that's going to be tough. Arsenal, Bayern, and Juve. Where do you see those three playing out? Is it? I suppose it literally is just going to be who can handle the pressure of the games, I suppose, and ideally you're looking to win those home games and potentially draw the away ones.
I think exactly that. Juventus are obviously in unbelievable form at the moment, and I think for them it really will be a case of making the most of their home legs and then seeing what they can do away from that, whether that's, you know, getting up the goal difference, drawing, sitting into a low block, because that's where teams like Arsenal will struggle, I think, is, as was mentioned, if a team like Juventus or even Valerenga go 1-0 up and then they decide they're just going to sit in a massive low block, then a team like Arsenal could end up really struggling with that. So I think it'll be I think it's a really like tasty draw overall, to be honest. I don't think any of these groups are like a complete given of who is going through and who isn't. My pick would be Bayern and Arsenal to go through. However, I think we'll see some interesting games to get to that point, though. I think it's really going to kind of like come right down to the nail. And as Sean said in the comment, that was one of my first thoughts with Valerenga, was what Brand did last year. You really do just never know. And even if it doesn't kind of come to full fruition, they really did push and really did cause some concerns for big teams. So yeah, we will definitely see. But I think between them all, there's, you know, Arsenal, obviously, we've seen some flaws in league performances, especially after last year's early exit from the Champions League. Before even making it to this point, they're so hungry to make it even further. However, it's not going to be easy that you need more than just the desire for it to beat teams like Juventus and Bayern, because they are going to be ruthless. And I think with Arsenal, from like an English side perspective, I think it's all going to be about scoring early. I think if they can score early, then it's almost like the floodgates will kind of open. But if they struggle to break down those other teams in the first half of these games, then I think they could have some problems. I think Juventus Bayern in particular is going to be such an interesting game, both legs. So excited to watch all of these, but I'm putting Bayern and Arsenal through personally, I think.
I think one other thing to really mention is looking at the way the fixture spread has fallen for Arsenal. I think they've got that really annoying fixture spread where obviously firstly they've got Bayern and then the much documented fact that Chelsea will have a break between their games, so they'll go fresh into Real Madrid and then into Arsenal. But Arsenal obviously play straight into, they go straight from sort of Bayern into playing Chelsea, which is tough. Then they've got Valerenga, which is, fine. Then they've got a tough away game. They've got a game against Brighton at home, which again, Brighton look like a decent outfit before they play Juventus. And then they've got the North London derby, which is not fun. Then again, Valerenga away before they go away and play Liverpool, which again, as we know, Liverpool are a dogged and annoying team to play against. And then they have to go home to Bayern on match day 6. If I'm an Arsenal fan, I really don't want to be coming into that match day 6 against Bayern with the destiny either of the case that they need to win, or alternatively that it needs sort of, a results to go their way, because ultimately I think Juventus, if they're playing Valerenga on that last day, and let's just say Valerenga had anything to play for, Juventus is going to go away and win. You never want it to be out of your hands. And I remember a few years ago when Chelsea went away and played Wolfsburg on that final game, and it was a case of that destiny was somewhat out of their hands, and Chelsea got absolutely dropped by Wolfsburg that day. They didn't perform at all, but I do think Arsenal will ultimately do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Juventus are right in there. And I do think, as we sort of said, I do think they can probably cause problems for teams, and they can disrupt it. I do think that at some point as well, I do think one of these, Bayern, Arsenal, or Juve, will drop points against Valoranga.
It's wonderful. Connor's in the chat and he's doing my job. He's winding people up, so it's great. I haven't got to worry about that at all. Beth, just to confirm there what you said, you've gone for Bayern and Arsenal to go through in that one, yes?
I have, yes, gone for Bayern and Arsenal. I think Juventus could definitely take points off of one or both of those teams, but I don't think that they'll drop enough to not go through. And I just think that looking at Arsenal in particular, kind of off the back of last year, obviously kind of everyone's talking about it. But when you look at, especially like those summer signings that Arsenal made, Caldente, Rosa Kafaji, like these are players who, when you add them to a squad that's already got someone like Friedemann, for example, it's just, they can compete with most teams, I would say. And that's not to say that they won't struggle. And there's so much that could happen in this group. But I think, I would struggle not to think that they probably will go through. And the same applies to Bayern, really.
Interesting. Rob, were they the two teams that you would go for as well?
Yeah, I think so. I do think it'll be close, but I do think it'll be those two. And I think from a coefficient point of view, it'd be good for it to be those two because English fans, not necessarily myself, but a lot of them do like to say the English league is the best league, and they have the best teams and is the most competitive. We need to now start proving it. And in the last couple of years, there's only been Chelsea really flying that flag in Europe.
Very interesting. Connor has gone for Bayern, Juve, Arsenal in that order, and I've actually written Bayern and Juve as the two teams that I thought would go through as well. So very interesting. We will run through our top 8 in just a moment, but there's one more mini league to go through, and that is, of course, Group D, which would complete the 16 teams for this year's Champions League. And we have got St. Polten, which I probably said wrong, St. Polten. Anyone know? No, brilliant.
I think it's St. Polten, but I may be wrong.
Polten.
I think it's Polten.
The Saints are in. They will be up against Hammarby, which is honestly one of my favourite names of a football team. And then, of course, you've got Manchester City, who, as we said, have not got very much pedigree in this competition really as yet. And then, of course, from that to royalty, effectively. They've been in 5 of the last 6 finals since 2019. And that is, of course, Barcelona. So 4 big teams on that one. Beth, when you look at that one, is it just a case of who's going through with Barcelona?
I think so. Yeah, I can see, I think, presumably Barca dominating this group. And then, I reckon it's a matter of who goes through with them. But that's not to say that these other teams can't compete with Barcelona, but you do expect them as the reigning champions to probably not necessarily have an easy ride, but probably don't need to worry as much as a lot of other teams across all of the groups about whether or not they will make it through the stage.
Okay, short, concise, simple, fair from Beth. Rob, is it that simple for you as well? I mean, the other 3 leagues have all had, this little bit of nuance, this little bit of a possibility. Granted, with Group B, it was mostly around FC Twente could do something, and Celtic are a big team in terms of the British side of watching it. But this one, I mean, Sean's come in and said that Hammarby could do a little something, as Sam Devil has also pointed out here. They're are strong at home.
Yeah, I think Hammarby at home are going to be a real tough team to beat. Like, they've got vociferous fan bases, and Swedish teams tend to be very good at being dogged and being frustrating. I do think, Barcelona will win this. I personally do think that, again, I think they've got, you've got St. Pölten and Hammarby in there. St. Pölten, I think, are unlikely to do too much. I mean, there was that one crazy game, I think, last year against AS Roma, where they went 2-0 up and proceeded to somehow lose it 4-3, thanks to conceding about 4 times in 10 minutes, which is quite spectacular. But I do think that ultimately Hammarby are going to be there to enjoy it. They've qualified. They've done really well to get through. I do think, they will have a phenomenal atmosphere there, especially at home when they face Barcelona, and also I think when they go away to Barcelona. I do think Manchester City versus Barcelona will be interesting, because Manchester City are one of those teams I think have the capability to hurt Barcelona, and someone like Bunny Shaw, I think they've got a centre forward that is the sort of centre forward Barcelona are going to hate facing, because similar to Mayra Ramirez, she's very powerful and strong, and not necessarily the sort of centre forward they really face on a regular basis in Liga F. Someone who sits there, backs the body into it, and I think I think they can do damage against Barcelona, but I do think Barcelona have too much, will have too much in the tank. Obviously, it will be inevitably hilarious when Kira Walsh scores against them, and the fact a lot will be made that she won't celebrate it will be inevitably entertaining. But I do think that, I think it'll be a decent game. I think it'll be a really decent game between the two of them. And I do think they'll qualify, but I do think, Hammarby will be a real entertaining team to watch. And they may well, it wouldn't surprise me if they took points off City, especially in Sweden.
I've got to be honest. My little pun brain wants Hammarby to sort of stick 5 or 6 past the team, so you can be hammered by Hammarby. I think the headline writes itself on that one. But there we go. Beth, Barcelona and who?
I'm gonna say Barcelona and City, because I think City's front line, once they kind of find their groove in the group stage, they're gonna, I think, do well. However, I think Hammarby are going to be a tough one for everybody, especially in their home leg. Their atmosphere is going to be incredible. They're a really strong side. Obviously, debutants for the Champions League group stage. So, yeah, St. Pölten, if we're going based on last year, I'm not feeling too hopeful for them, but you never know. But yeah, I think Barcelona are going to be in the clear at the top for me. And then second, I've got City, but maybe not by much if they do drop points against Hammarby, for example.
I've got to be honest, I thought this from Shane. That's kind of where I went. I went Barcelona and City as well. Rob, so far, out of the 8 possible teams that you guys could have chosen to make it through to the next round, you have picked team for team the same teams, which is wonderful for you two. It kind of almost makes it look like the reason why we get you guys on as guests is because you're sensible, you know what you're talking about, and it's interesting that I do not have the same hate as you lot, and you can infer from that what you wish. But are you going to go Barcelona City, or is this the one where you drop a absolute hammer? See what I did there again, and change it up a bit. What do you reckon?
No, I think it's going to be Barcelona City. But like I did say, I will put in that I think Hammarby will take points off one of City or Barcelona in Sweden. I will go out and say that I think they have the quality, and the fact that, again, the team they knocked out on the way to get here was Benfica, who impressed last time and themselves have got through to the knockout stages. It's not as if they knocked out sort of one of the teams that you look at and think, oh, well, they've never been in the group stages. This was someone that had, while they did lose, a key player to the summer to FC Barcelona, they aren't a team that you were looking at and thinking, oh, complete no-hopers here.
Well, very, very Interesting. It wasn't necessarily the 8 that I expected you guys to go with, but you have done so. You have gone for Lyon, you've gone for Roma, you've gone for Chelsea and Real Madrid. You have gone for Bayern Munich, you've gone for Arsenal, you have gone for Barcelona, and you have gone for Manchester City. Now, for your help, I have put that together, and we're just going to do that. There we go. So that just reminds you of your 8 teams, because I would hate for you during this conversation to be sitting there going, oh, who did I say again? Is there somebody I've forgotten? So that's just running around, but that is literally team for team what the pair of you have chosen. So that is your side, and all 3 of you, so both of you saying that all 3 of the English teams are going to make their way through. The Metathors, love them, love a Metathor. So there we go. We've got some big teams in there. Chelsea have obviously made the last 2 semi-finals. I'm going to ask you this direct, and I know there'll be people who will think that whatever it is that you say, Rob, it's just going to be Chelsea biased. But you made 2 semi-finals under probably the greatest manager that the WSL has ever seen, in Emma Hayes, but wasn't able to get that last little one, really. You know, the runners up obviously in 2021 season where he didn't do much, 21-22, but like I say, 2 semi-finals in the last 2 years. It's something that you say. Just wanted to point that out. Something that you say, like, you know, rather than just because, you know, people might disagree. Like, clearly you've just gone for one there. I think she is, but, you know, not everybody does. So just trying to be neutral and nice. I think she is, just to see aware on that one. Now you've got Sonia Bonpastor, who has also been a runner-up, you know, last year as well. But she won it with Lyon a couple of years ago. So is this the year, do you think, where Chelsea can, first of all, push past that semi-final sort of barrier that you seem to have put up at the moment against yourselves? Can she want to help get you there? And if so, is this the most promising year for Chelsea with regards to the possibilities of actually winning the Champions League?
Oh, Christ, that's a tough one. Firstly, I just want to address a comment from Sachin here of 3 English teams predicting English clubs to go through. I'm not sure in what groups. I mean, I think we both said that Twente could spring a surprise in their group. And I think we both agreed that Juventus could spring a surprise. It's not as if we said they're all, you know, the English clubs are cast iron to go through. It's just being, you know, realistic, acknowledging the fact that whether people like it or not. And this is what I really don't understand is that I will happily admit Arsenal and Manchester City are good sides. Do I want Chelsea to beat them when they play them? Of course. But there's no point in me pretending that they're not good teams, because you don't get to this stage of this tournament without being a good side, one way or the other, or having, you know, merits. Right, rant over. Back onto the sort of, you know, the important matters.
Just to add to that, it's not 3. He's lost count entirely, because I've actually got Arsenal not to go through. So just to point that one out for you, if that helps. Carry on.
I mean, I do think, again, someone else has said that. I think if Chelsea can avoid Barcelona, it's hard to do, but if they can avoid Barcelona until the final, I think they've shown last year they have the ability to beat Barcelona in a one-off match. And I think the fact they were able to win the Stade Louis Company will be a big thing for them. Obviously, the second leg, you know, less said about that, the better from a number of points of view. But I do also think in that game, Chelsea had chances to, you know, they will feel they should have scored in that game. They will feel that, even, you know, refereeing decisions aside, they will feel that they should have got on the score sheet. And I do think, you know, you're going to have another more year of Myra Ramirez. So even if she isn't scoring at this moment in time, I think you saw what a transformation she was to the attack on Friday, and how hard Crystal Palace found it to deal with her. Obviously, Barry, I've heard the voice notes. You don't need any more reminding on Myra Ramirez. I've heard the voice notes from last season. I do think that, you know, she's someone who can really cause a lot of damage, especially in Europe. And I do think, again, the Chelsea midfield still lacking. I personally think that if they can keep the first choice midfield out there, they have so much quality in there, they can just blow teams away. You know, you're looking at the options if they can get players fully fit. You've got Sam Kerr, obviously, to return. You've got Katerina Macario at the moment, who can't even start. You've got Joanna Richard-Cannerud, who is doing her best Graham Hansen impression. You've got Lauren James, who's capable of winning a game on her own. You've got Guro Reiten, who probably, pound for pound is Connor's favourite footballer that doesn't play for Manchester United. You've got, I think, Lucy Bronze, which inevitably somehow means you are, I think, entitled to winning the Champions League. I believe that's how it works. Is by signing Lucy Bronze, you automatically claim the trophy. Obviously not, but and I think you've got so much quality in the squad, and it will have stung players last year, but I think they will have been encouraged by it. And I also do think if Chelsea get to that stage in January, they will maybe look at the squad and maybe try and bring in that, that star player, that X factor in January to try and bolster it. So I see no reason why they can't win it under Sonia Bonpastor. She's done it as a player. She's done it as a manager. She is an elite coach. I think you're starting to see, elements of that coming off, especially in the second half the other day, of how well Chelsea were able to respond, I think, and take Palace apart. I think, there's no reason to doubt them. I do think there are other top teams in there as well. I think every team down there that you're looking at realistically, maybe besides Real Madrid and Roma, realistically, every one of them would think, yeah, we can win this Champions League.
Very interesting that you say that, because, Beth, I was going to throw this over to you as well. Now, obviously, when you made your debut a few weeks ago on the Championship review that actually played by that point show, we were looking ahead to what the Championship might go. You were painted as a Sunderland fan, and I've got to be honest with you, that has stuck in my mind. For reference, she's not a Sunderland fan. The God's honest truth is, I don't know who you support, and frankly, I don't particularly care. But actually, that air of mystique that you've got here, I think, will help you to talk a little bit just about Arsenal and City, because obviously we are English, so we're going to just start with the chances of the English teams as we are at the moment. And it's interesting going on from what Rob said there, because he just said everyone bar, was it Roma and Madrid, did you say, would feel like they had a chance of winning it. Is that right? Yeah, he's not argued, so I'm guessing it was. So,
yeah.
Because he absolutely would have argued if I got it wrong, so that's fine. But for you, Beth, I mean, I'd look at that. I don't necessarily think that's true for City. I'm not convinced that City, again, first time really in with this format, I'm not convinced that they would be a team that is likely to go on and win, especially when you look at someone like Barcelona, who just absolutely dominated the competition for this amount of time. If I put Barcelona up against any of those teams that are rolling along the bottom there, I'm not convinced that City would be one of those. And that's not me trying to come at this from being a Manchester United fan or anything like that. Just being honest as best as I can. But what do you think of that? Arsenal, City, I think we'd all agree that Chelsea are likely to spearhead the English challenge. But if they were to fall by the wayside, would you see an Arsenal or a City having the opportunity and the ability to steal one, I suppose?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think Chelsea are going to be the kind of English front runners as such. I can really see them going far this year, perhaps possibly even further than they did last year. City, I don't think that they'll not do well, but I think once they do end up facing your Barcelonas or your Lyons, I don't know quite how they'll fare with that, because they do have such incredible talent, especially up front. But the depth, especially defensively, I think has been mentioned in the comments. One injury at the back and it's going to be a real struggle. And as I think is also being picked up on relatively early days, to be kind of looking at that stage of things. So I think they can compete for sure, but I don't know if I see them making it to kind of the latter stages. And with Arsenal, I honestly think it could go either way. Arsenal could go out in the group, or they could go to the semi-final. It's really, really tough to call it. They have this really, really brilliant squad. With, again, like I said before, players like Caldente just making that massive difference and bringing that experience as well with the Champions League. And that's something that Chelsea obviously have as well. Not saying that City don't have that, but I do just think it's a bit of a different situation. However, Arsenal we are seeing, like in the league, for example, still kind of lacking that end product in terms of goal scoring. We know that Jonas Eidevall's side have difficulties breaking down low blocks. So how many of those they're going to come across in the competition, we don't quite know yet. So for me, Chelsea are the only English side that I'm confidently saying are going not necessarily all the way, but a long way. I think Arsenal could, but there's absolutely no guarantee. And City, I'm not particularly keen to say that they're going to go too much further than the groups, but more than happy to be proven wrong on that.
Absolutely, and Sipaway agrees with you there. Very, very interesting. Being put out. Sean's, but she's a City fan. Do you know what she is? She's the nicest City fan I've ever met. So
I noticed they didn't say which city. So in my mind, exactly in my mind, I've decided that it's actually Exeter City.
Okay, why not? Yeah, is there a Sunderland City? Is there
Sunderland.
We'll have to wait and see if one of those exists. If not, we
City
can make
of Sunderland Football Club.
So, we'll throw this one around to the other side now. We've looked at it from a sort of a domestic, as far as we're concerned. London City, very good, well played. We've looked at this from a sort of domestic point of view. I think we'd all agree that Barcelona would be the favourites. They're the returning champions. So if we take Manchester City, it's all going on now in the chat. If we take Barcelona out of the equation and don't necessarily throw them down as being the likelihood of, or having the likelihood of winning it, Rob, if you were to look at, obviously Roma, you've said no, Real Madrid, you've said no, that leaves you with Lyon, that leaves you with Bayern Munich. Which of those, would it just be those two that you see as being likely to be contenders to Barcelona's crown this season?
I think Lyon, Bayern, Chelsea. I think, as I said, I think all six of them can do it. But I think Lyon, Bayern, and Chelsea will all feel that they stand a good chance. So Chelsea, for what we've already discussed. Lyon, for the fact that they've got so much pedigree and quality in there, and you've got, again, people like Eder Hegberg. I always say this. I don't think modern, and by modern I mean post-Euros fans, quite realise how good a footballer Eder Hegberg is, or indeed was, and sort of the level of prestige she had in the game maybe before, in sort of the 2015 to 2020, where pretty much every time you turn Lyon on and Eder Hegberg was playing, it was just right, well, Hegberg's scoring at least once or twice today. I do think that it's, exactly, this is it. They pushed Barca all the way last year. They've kept the goal. People, bizarrely, and again, I don't know if it's just because Joe Montemurro has come in and maybe people don't, necessarily quite have the respect for him due to time in England, which I think is unfair. Or perhaps, his time at Juventus last year, which obviously checkered. But he's a very likeable, popular squad manager. He's someone I think that will free up that squad. And there's so much attacking firepower in there. They have the ability to blow anyone away. I think Bayern also are a really, really well-drilled outfit. And they've got so much quality in the sort of, in the team. They've got so much, impetus. You've got people like Leo Schuller, Vanilla Hard, as we already said. The background defence of Vigos Dottir and Magda Eriksson. The defenders as well. Yeah, a resident Bayern fan, of course, in the comments. I do think, they've got a really good squad. They've got a good manager there. And I think the other thing with people like Bayern, they've got people like Georgia Stanway, for instance, that are willing to, like, if she comes up against, say, an English side where you maybe need that bit of grit or that bit of tussle in there, she's going to love that. She's going to love getting stuck in against one of those teams because it's the sort of player that she absolutely is. And I do, no surprise that Connor's having to go. Connor's having to go support Bayern or to see any kind of European football. No surprise. But I do think that it's I do think it's one of those. It's a really fascinating company, and obviously Barcelona are Barcelona. Like I've been criticised before for it about the way I approach FC Barcelona and Liga F. I want to make this abundantly clear, and I'll put this on record and someone can clip it. Barcelona are a phenomenal footballing side. At no point have I ever said they're not a phenomenal footballing side. I think they're brilliant. They were great to watch. And, they a couple of years ago, they actually dismantled Chelsea in the final. But I do think you have a problem in that they've got so far ahead of some of the other teams in their league that it's not competitive enough. And I think eventually you're going to get to a stage where they aren't going to be challenged domestically. And that's not a good thing for the league to grow. So them being brilliant is one thing. Them being so good it detracts from the league actually having any kind of jeopardy is another. And I think the league needs that jeopardy to actually be, to be a problem, for it to actually really to grow. And until you get that kind of jeopardy, until you get the Spanish FA actually giving a damn, because equally they are, abysmal, and they failed miserably to capitalise on what should have been a golden opportunity to platform their players, because Luis Rubiales was. I'll mute my microphone because I don't want to get my. I think that this is one of those things that people forget. They had so much opportunity to do that, and I saw Wendy Renard in an interview said that about the French. When France hosted the Euros, they wasted the opportunity to grow on and develop that. I think the Spanish FA have done the same thing. And apologies, that was slightly unrelated, but I have to get off my chest because I'm bored of Barcelona fans telling me I don't like FC Barcelona, when in actual fact I do quite enjoy watching them. It's just they're a bit like, I always describe it as being a bit like eating like really, really rich chocolate mousse. Great to have in a small dose and you really enjoy it, but having it every single time, it just, it gets too much.
I'm quite a fan of chocolate mousse. That was probably not the best one to choose. But I do get where you go with that. I couldn't eat a lot. So I did have 2 for my lunch today because I took one into work and realised I still had one left over from Friday. So bonus for me.
Can I just reply to what someone said? I can't like Barcelona. It's not a case of not liking them. It's a case of respect. I respect good footballing sides, and I don't understand why this is so bloody, such a bloody insecure thing in the women's football world. Of you like other teams and think other teams look like good sides. Do I want Chelsea to beat them whenever they play them? Absolutely. Does it annoy me when they don't? Yes. Are they huge rivals? Yes. At the same time, it's not a crime to actually like other teams. It's not a crime to think that. Leah Walty, for example, is a brilliant footballer. It's not a crime for me to think that, I'd really at some point would have really loved to have seen Ella Hegerberg in her prime play for Chelsea. Why is this so tribal? Why is this such a stupid tribal sport?
Bless him, he's flagging. But we're getting to the end. We're getting to the end. Don't worry, Rob. We're nearly there. Power through. Thomas had to do this for 3 hours, and we have a men's channel to worry about. So this is like my haven of safety over here. Right, a couple of quick fire questions for you now to sort of take us through to the end. Obviously, we got the 8 teams going along the bottom. Of the 8 teams that have not made it through to the next round in your hypothetical finishes, which one team left over? So for you guys, that's Galatasaray, Wolfsburg, Celtic, Twente, Juventus, Vålerenga, St. Paulton, and Hammarby. Out of those 8, which one do you think is we'll call them the dark horse, which one do you think is the one that could upset the apple cart and be the 9th most likely one to go into the 8? Beth, I'll let you go first.
Hammarby.
She's gone Hammarby. Lovely. Rob?
I think Juventus have to be the name because, again, I think they have a chance to come second in their group.
Okay, very good. Next question then. I won't get you to cut the 8 into 4 because I don't know what the draws are going to look like in that respect, and that's far too far. But I am going to ask you which 2 teams you think are most likely to contest the final. Some might say the final that you'd most like to see. Yeah, we'll go with that one first. The one you'd most like to see, because that way you can be as biased as you like. So, Rob, what's the final you'd like to see? Chelsea and who?
I'd quite like to see Chelsea versus Lyon because I think there's it's narrative central, isn't it? With Sonia Bonpastor potentially lifting the Champions League against their former side. The football gods like that sort of nonsense.
Okay, so who would like to see Chelsea and Lyon? Beth, who would you like to see?
I would like to see Arsenal Lyon.
Just writing that down because I think that might have been a hint. Put that down there. As soon as I got into the chat, I'm just going to pop that down for a rainy day. Lovely. Okay, so Arsenal and Lyon over there. Which one do you think it's most likely to be? Which two teams do you think are the strongest in those 8, Rob?
I think Chelsea and Barcelona, in all honesty. But I think Lyon are very close. And I think Bayern are close as well.
Okay, very good. Beth?
Yeah, it's Chelsea and Barcelona for me as well.
Interesting. So you both said Chelsea and Barcelona. Here's the big question. Which one of those two do we think, and by we, I mean you, I have no part in this, which one of those two teams do you think will be the ones that walk away with the Champions League trophy? I realised I didn't give a name there. I thought somebody might just break the silence first. I was going to let you go for it, but apparently that's not happening. So, Rob, we'll let you go first.
Can you repeat the question?
Who's going to win it?
You know what? I say it last year I just didn't say Chelsea were going to win. So this year, you know what? We're going to win it. Finally, finally the rock is coming off the back.
Interesting. What do you think, Beth? Who are you going for?
I still think Barcelona.
Interesting. I mean, it would be very, very, very similar, wouldn't it, to what we've seen in the WSL in terms of domination, for that to continue European-wise. And I think, on the whole, I would probably tend to agree with you. Okay, well, there we go. You heard it here first. The experts at All for Women's Football have gone for Barcelona and Chelsea. And it could be either one of those. So there you go. That's what they've gone for. We're going to finish with this final question, because actually I think this is a really interesting statement, because it did occur to me whilst we were running through this. Obviously, this isn't what we would see in the men's game. The men's game has got a 32-team league with lots of different ways of playing, and just one individual game against an individual team. None of this home and away nonsense in terms of playing that. And also, Rob, you spoke earlier about a different type of European league, European title, that was won obviously by Glasgow City, doing particularly well in that one as well. Do you think it's the right time in the women's game for us to convert into this new system, where we'll also be seeing a second-tier European trophy as well? Or do you think that actually the way this was running was probably the right way for where the women's game is at the moment across Europe?
To be honest, I think it kind of needs a change. I'm not necessarily enamoured with the new format, but again, I think time will sort of tell. I think it does encourage more interesting fixtures. Touch wood, it means Chelsea don't play Real Madrid twice, maybe only once next year. But I do think it needed a bit of a change. I think, the second-tier trophy, I think is quite an interesting thing. I'm curious to see how they implement that. What I really don't want that to become, and what I do fear it might end up being, is teams that don't qualify through the Champions League knockout suddenly get implemented into that, and it just becomes some ridiculous, bloated, absolute nonsense. Because I think if you have that happening, I then almost think you have to say any team in Europe isn't in the Conti Cup, because then I think the Conti Cup is just going to become an absolute sideshow. I think it already has become a bit of that. And but this is my honest thoughts there. The Conti Cup was brought in with an intention to have different teams winning it, because the Conti teams were winning the WSL and the FA Cup. Can you name to me the 3 teams that have won the Conti Cup, Barry?
Man City.
Yes.
Arsenal.
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes. And this is exactly my point. It's failed in what it's aimed to actually do. And I actually think if you had a better, format in it, not only do you have it's a whole discussion, I think, the Conti Cup. But I think, a Europa League for the women, or equivalent of whatever we want to call it, I think that will encourage more teams out. It will get more investment in there. It gets more eyes on some of the teams that maybe don't get as much attention. And it can actually be, introduce some really good European ties and introduce you to some more interesting. This is it. I don't want teams that, coming third in the Champions League going into that competition, because let's just say, for instance, you have a situation like that group where Lyon, Wolfsburg, Roma are all there. what you really don't want is all of them suddenly, just moving into this new competition. That, I think, would be a terrible, terrible format.
Absolutely. I just want to point out as well, Connor's doing this. He's put the Conti Cup as greater than the UWCL. I feel like now is a good time to just reveal to everyone that at the moment, Connor is undergoing some rather stressy work at the moment that he's doing. And I feel like we've become his outlet for the anger and depression that he is currently feeling about doing the job that he is currently having to do this evening. So therefore, he's been on the wind-up and he's done it marvellously well. So well done, sir. Beth, for you, this brand new competition, where do you stand on that one? Because I don't know. To be honest, I haven't looked enough into what the new system's going to look like and the new format's going to look like. But aside from sort of the craziness as to how they qualify and the number of qualifications there seems to be, and the fact that I just do not understand really how you win a qualifying game and move on to the next one, and I'll get very confused very easily on that one. It's kind of worked okay, but again, we're seeing teams like PSG, for example. They're a side who have made 3 out of the last 4 semi-finals as well. They're not even in the competition this year because they've lost a one-off game in qualification, and that feels a little bit odd because PSG, you would think, would look like a side that you would expect to see in the Champions League at this point. So did it require a bit of a change? Was this too drastic of a change, or do you think it's right that they kind of level it up with the Champions League as it is in the men's game?
Yeah, I honestly don't have too much of a problem with the new format. I understand what people are saying in terms of saying goodbye to teams like PSG that early on, but it's a really unforgiving qualification process. So maybe that's where then a conversation about a second European league comes in. However, I just think that before we can continue to change things with the aim of growing the game, which is obviously what we all want, we need to make sure that it's being done right first. And this isn't necessarily the fault of like UEFA or the Champions League, but even down to what we've seen happen with the Chelsea game on Sunday having to be postponed because there were scheduling issues with the WSL. We need to not be having problems like that. Things need to be planned better by the domestic leagues, for example, before we can commit to even more of these fixtures in Europe, because I think ultimately it would be so brilliant to have that, but it needs to not come at the detriment of players and at the detriment of clubs. And yeah, there's so many factors to consider, but I think that when we have any sort of conversation about whether it's this new format or adding another league or anything else kind of in that same vein, I think it's important that it's like done sustainably and done in a way that works healthily for clubs and for players. And at times it can seem a little bit like it maybe is not quite 100% there yet. So I think until we're there, I think everybody should tread very carefully because you just can't rush things like that, I think is the main point. So yeah, while it would be great to see more and more progression, and we are seeing that, we're seeing new teams in this group stage this year, for example, is such a massive reflection of that, but it needs to be done carefully, I think, and scheduling obviously in particular is such an important thing to consider when it comes to like player safety as well. So yeah, it's a whole podcast on its own, but yeah, there's a lot to think about there. You're muted, Barry.
Yeah, there you go. Very interesting indeed. And I think it was Phil Collins who once sang "You Can't Hurry Love," and if Beth was singing that, she was saying "You can't hurry football and progress." So there we go. I'd love to spend some more time answering this, but my bandwidth is running. You can Google it. It is on Wikipedia. Because I do remember finding a page that had it. I don't have the time to rush through and grab it for now, but I do think it's, again, depending on where your coefficient is, you get a certain number of teams that are able to qualify for it. So England, I think, may have won all of that sort of thing. And so it will be basically the next finishing spot. So you look at us, there's 3 that can make it into the Champions League. I would imagine that if you finish 4th, you make it into the 2nd tier. So there we go. Rob, if people have really enjoyed listening to your various diatribes this evening, where else might they find more of them?
You can find it at journalism_RP on X. You can also now find my articles this year for all the sporting news. Also, again, regular pieces for DAZN returning soon and some stuff for her football hub. So look out for all of that.
Absolutely. And Beth, once again, if people have enjoyed your random musings, where might they find more?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Beth R. McCowan, and then most of my work on the halfway line, also sporting news and her football hub.
Is there any new Scottish? Perhaps you're Celtic fan. Maybe I miswrote that one. We'll have to wait and see. The mystique is killing me. There'll be a big reveal one day, maybe at Christmas. It'll be wonderful. Gang, I've really enjoyed it. It's been a brilliant chat. I can't believe that's been 75 minutes. But thank you so much. Once again, your knowledge has been superb. And remember, whether you agree, whether you disagree, they're all just opinions. That's all they are. It's just people coming on here, putting their opinion across. Nobody's saying it's definitely going to happen. Why? Because if they did know that, I'll be tapping them up for Saturday night's lottery numbers. They don't know it. We're all just working off the same set of information. It's been a pleasure. So many of you in the chat as well. Brilliant to have you. Thank you so much for coming along and making the show what it is. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Get them to come and have a watch. That's what we're doing. We'll be back again at some point next week, midweek, Wednesday. Don't forget, we've got Lower League Lingo episode 7, which I still can't believe that Connor's letting us get away with doing it. So it's superb. We're really enjoying delving into all of the aspects of lower league football from the WNL and below. So feel free to catch us there Wednesday at 7. If you haven't already seen it, go back, have a little look at the deep dive that we did into the Welsh League with Laura and Sean. That was a really good one for you to catch up on. But other than that, we'll be back again, I would imagine, next Monday. I can't wait. Be interesting to see who's there. But until then, thanks again and good night.